In the underbelly of historic London, where secrets are as ancient as the cobblestone streets themselves, a revelation emerged that would cast a shadow over one of America's brightest luminaries. Beneath a well-trodden path on Craven Street in 1996, discovery was made, not of forgotten artifacts, but over 1,000 human bones, nearly 200 years old. Investigators dug into it out that during this time, the owner of this house was none other than Benjamin Franklin. This was not just any ordinary historical find, it was the opening of a dark chapter that intertwined grave robbery, clandestine anatomy lessons, and one of history's most esteemed figures. To hear the whole story, just keep listening on. So this is not a full-length episode, we're just jumping into a quick one because I thought this was really interesting. So I hope you can join me for the next few minutes. So the story takes place in a neighborhood called Westminster, and the address in question is 36 Craven Street. It was an old Georgian house which stood stoically. And like I mentioned, it just happened to be owned by Benjamin Franklin. Just in case you don't know who Franklin is, he was an American inventor, renowned for his contributions to science, literature, and politics. London knew him as a diplomat, a thinker, and an emblem of the New World's promise. Yet, beneath the wooden floors of his dwelling in London, there's a macabre discovery just waiting to happen. Franklin lived at the address from 1757 to 1775, dying on April 17, 1790. So it would be almost 200, or just over 200 years before these bones were uncovered in 1998 during some renovations. Investigators become involved and they start digging through the site, finding that there's bones ranging from adults to infants, and their skeletal structures were all interrupted by markings of surgical procedures. So right away, people start flipping out. And knowing that this is a historical house, again, in a area of crime that may be connected to Jack the Ripper, who might be also H.H. Holmes. Right away, and rumors are on the go, people start wondering, is like Franklin performing some kind of torture op on people? What is going on? Like, why are these bodies in your house? Talk about a scandal if the guy was still alive. So the volume of the remains and their location exactly beneath the house just painted a picture of a lot of dead people with a lot of questions. This time period did offer some clues. 18th century London was a hotbed for medical innovation, specifically anatomy and discipline. This was in kind of the early stages of its development, and the demand for cadavers for research and teaching far outstripped the legal supply. This led to a sinister underground profession titled grave robbing. Also, the people that would carry out the grave robbing were called body snatchers, or the correct term at the time was resurrectionist. So they would exhume these freshly buried corpses, bring them to the medical institutions and to independent scholars for their studies. The city's graveyards became a hunting ground, with the stolen dead becoming subjects to the anatomist's blade. Within this shadowy realm operated Dr. William Hewson, a pioneering anatomist and close associate of Franklin. With formal channels failing to meet his needs, it is believed that Hewson turned to the black market, acquiring bodies to dissect and study. His operations, it was revealed, were conducted in the very house on Craven Street. But where does Franklin fit into this puzzle? So there's no evidence that directly implicated him in the act of grave robbing. However, his proximity to Hewson and the location of the clandestine anatomy school within his actual home raised a lot of unsettling questions. It's conceivable that Franklin, with his scientific curiosity, may have been privy to, if not directly involved in these underground operations. The line between pursuit of knowledge and ethics in such games is blurred sometimes, so this is obviously a topic of debate. Good guy, bad guy. Basically, okay, so what we have is Ben Franklin. He's got his little doctor, we'll call him Cut Boy, and he's in the basement cutting up people. Probably knows about it and saying that this was like an accepted activity during the time. Is it possible? Sure thing. You got to be a little bit weird to do it? Definitely. The reason I am convinced that this is a weird thing is because of someone else in that time period that was thought to possibly also be Jack the Ripper, known as H. Holmes, was doing the exact same thing. And I'm not talking about the cutting up of bodies, I'm talking about grave robbing. So operating primarily in Chicago during the late 19th century, Holmes constructed a elaborate structure that the media chillingly labels a murder castle. This building was rife with hidden chambers, secret passageway, and gas vents leading into rooms, making it a death trap for the unsuspecting. The bones of Franklin's homes hinted at scientific curiosity mixed with dark ethics. Holmes' deeds were definitely driven by sheer malevolence. He confesses to 27 murders. The actual count could be considerably higher. Intriguingly, the time frame of his crimes overlap with the reign of terror inflicted by another infamous figure, Jack the Ripper, in London. There's no concrete evidence linking the two. However, a lot of speculative theories have begun to rise that this might actually be the same person, adding another layer of mystery to this already dark tale. The main thing linking, some of the main parts linking Holmes as the Ripper is that you have both of the medical background. So H. Holmes, like I mentioned, I think his real name was like Herman Webster Mudgett, but he was also a medical student. So the one thing to point out is that you got to picture this from the perspective of the investigators going through this crime, knowing this was the historical playing ground of the Ripper, who may also be H.H. Holmes. Like I mentioned, his connection to the Ripper, the reason they might think it's the same person is the medical background in some of the crimes, the grave robbing. As they uncover the forensic data, the Franklin house isn't connected because there's almost like a 70, 80 year time difference between the age of bones and the activity of the Ripper or Holmes, and that Benjamin Franklin must just be a weird guy with bodies in his basement. So it's definitely a weird thing, but I find it so odd that you can have Holmes out there murdering people, and you have Franklin and his little cut boy essentially just doing the same thing, but on people who died naturally. Really, so it's funny. Anyway, that's a funny little story I came across, and I wanted to share it with you. Thank you for joining us.